After you've gotten your motion link set up to get your drivetrain moving correctly, it's time to work on your Clawbot arm. So I will show you the workflow for that. Let me move this thing here if I. Okay, the first parts will be inputting your new parts, all right? And so I've backed this up, and I'm just going to show you what that workflow is first, and then following, I will kind of zoom in and pan around the pieces so you can kind of see how they're all set up. So we bring in some bearing flats, okay? So 4 exactly. Then you start joining them. Okay, these are rigid joints, and you'll see in a sec, it's going in the middle hole because these are 3 holes deep, right? And it's the very top hole is what it gets joined to. Okay, so let's go back to the front. Keep moving forward here. All right, and then the other one goes directly beneath it. Okay, on both sides. All right, so then you bring in a 3-inch axle and put that in the middle. Okay, so this is a different kind of joint. This is not a rigid joint. This is a revolute. All right, and so specifically what you'll want to do is tell basically the end of this to revolute through one of these holes. Okay, see how that hole is highlighted there? But before that hole like that, but before you drop it, we'll say, or like click OK on it, let's go back to front. You want to actually make sure that it is centered. Okay, so I believe the distance between here and there is like 0.555, or maybe it's between here and there is 0.555, okay? And it should be the exact same on both sides. So try that out, that number, 0.555. Let's move forward here. So we've got that axle in. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see what's happening as we kind of move forward on the history. All right, so you bring in an 84 tooth gear. These should already be in your folder. All right, bring in 2 of those and bringing in some shaft collars. Okay, so then you will do a rigid joint between the shaft collar and not the bearing flat. All right, so be careful with this. I made this mistake the first time, but the shaft collar and the end of this axle. Okay, so right there. Again, you'll have to space it once you do that, because when you say, okay, I want to do a revolute joint between this, like we'll say like the circle, you know, it would be just on the edge, the circle of one of the shaft collars and then the center of the circle of the shaft, it's going to try to line those up perfectly, right? And you don't want it over there to start with. We'll have to put one there later. But so before you click OK, just drag it over until there's just a tiny amount of space between it and the bearing flat. You see that there? All right. So let's go back to the front view. Keep moving forward. So you're going to do that multiple times here. All right, we got the other one on the other side. Then same thing with these 84 tooth gears. You will want to join these as revolutes and, as rigid. Okay, and it was rigid with this other one. It needs to be rigid with the axle because the axle is the thing that turns, and then these are rigid with that axle. So make it a rigid joint, and at this point you can actually do it to the shaft collar if you want. All right, you don't have to go to the end of the axle or shaft. Okay, so bringing in another 3-inch shaft, centering it and joining it as a revolute. Bringing in some spacers now. So these I had to import. Okay, so I've got all those files that I've showed you before how to download. I had to, basically go to data panel and say, oh man, that thing isn't where I wanted it to be. And while I'm at it, here's another thing you'll have to upload, the 2-wire motor, okay? And it should go in your power folder. But what you do is you just click upload when you're missing something, select files, and you look around in these folders that you downloaded, okay? It's gonna go right back to them if you've used them before. This, of course, is like everything. To find those spacers, you had to go to, let's see, probably motion, and shafts and drive hardware, and spacers, and then we wanted the 0.25 inch spacer. All right, this one right here. Okay, so once you click that, you click open, and then you click where you want it to be. And for this one, I didn't have it in power, I had it in motion. Okay, but yeah, so that's how that process works. I've already done this, so I'm gonna click cancel. Okay, otherwise you would click upload. All right, so getting back to it here. We're going to continue moving forward, seeing what we do next. So bringing in those spacers. And like the shaft collars, make sure you do a rigid, not revolute, joint with the, we'll say one of these circles, right? Center one of those circles and the center of the shaft and right there, okay? So that's how that works. It should be rigid, and before you click OK again, you'll have to drag it over so it's not like interfering with the other parts there. We're going to bring in two 12-tooth gears. You should already have these in here. Again, if you don't, do that upload process I just showed you. These will be rigid joints, and they can be joined basically from, circle to like that circle there. Okay, that works. You might have to click flip at the bottom left corner before you hit join. All right, let's go back to the front. So we get those in there, and then finally some shaft collars. Okay, and you know how to join those. All right, so lastly, that's the next thing you'll do. Okay, and then the last thing I have on here is, well, I just did it motion link, okay, to get these connected, and I'll show you. It's not, well, yeah, it looks like it's working correctly here, right? So when I drag this forward, that moves the opposite direction, okay? That's what we want. However, when I actually animate the motion link, what I would show you is that, let's see here, we'll say animate model. It's moving the wrong direction for what I want. I would, well, actually right now it's doing what I want. Except, no, this looks correct. That's good. I wonder if it changes depending on which one you tell to animate. That is very interesting. That is worth knowing. Okay. Well, so besides that, because these aren't 60-tooth gears, both of them, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So you have to figure out what's the difference between an 84-tooth and a 12-tooth gear. So actually what you want to do is tell this one to rotate 51.429 degrees for every 360 degrees of this, right? Because it's going to rotate much slower because it is a much larger gear. So let's see that again. You can see this is flying by and this is going much slower. Okay, so that is what we want. All right, so that should bring us up to about where I'm at. Finally, I brought in a motor here. And the first thing I'll tell you about the motor is that I created a rigid group because when I started trying to pull this around and move it, everything came apart. Again, you'll have to import this or upload this from that other folder, but and you'll have to add the shaft coupler. So we'll talk about that in a sec. But yeah, so now I've got a rigid group. So you'll see when I go to grab this, I think I am all the way caught up now. One of these things is going to come loose. All right, I discluded that. I did not include that in this rigid group because I kind of don't want that wire right now. So then I'm going to join this, etc., etc. All right, hope that brings you up to speed. Just if you need to, let's take a brief look at what I've got here. I'll zoom in. You can kind of take a look at the things there. Feel free to pause this, and then that'll be the end of this video. All right.